Hello again, Yaksamash, and welcome back to Wrench Reads, Trilogy of Morgalla, Diary of a Lonely Demon number 13. As always, if this is the first Wrench Reads you've watched, click the on-screen annotation appearing right now and go back to the introduction. Start there. And also, as always, the link to the Amazon for the novel that I will be reading, Diary of a Lonely Demon, is in the description box below. I hope all of you have had a very good week. I certainly have. As always, I have my reading here and ready to go. It should be a relatively decent read, and hopefully it'll finish chapter 4. Excuse me. But today's introduction, I'd like to talk just for a very brief moment about villains in a book like this, or in any novel, any media that requires, a hero and a villain. You could make an argument that certain types of media of this kind doesn't really need a villain. Maybe it just has essentially the primary antagonist isn't necessarily a villain. And honestly, in my opinion, the best kinds of media like this are less black and white than your standard hero and villain story. Not every villain character has to be, the sneering top hat wearing guy with a handlebar mustache that puts the damsel on the railroad tracks. The best villains, in my opinion, and as an example, I will use Watchmen, Adrian Veidt, in the Watchmen comic book and movie series, if you're not familiar with the graphic novel. Adrian Veidt, for those of you who don't know, is essentially uses his intelligence, his skill, his strength, his speed, and everything else to kill millions to save billions. Essentially, I'll put a spoiler warning. He essentially killed millions to save billions. He prevented nuclear war through a couple different things, but more specifically, even though he's the villain, even though he's killed millions, there is no denying that what he did saved billions of people, saved billions of lives from the nuclear war between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. That kind of villain is less of a villain, in my opinion, and more of just a primary antagonist, because he has a good reason for doing what he's doing. It's not just he's doing this to put the damsel on the railroad tracks in this analogy. And that's kind of the other side, the other end of the spectrum. The top hat, handlebar mustache guys on one end, and Adrian Veidt, or the well thought out, very well done protagonist, is kind of on the other extreme. If you're thinking of another example of a villain, think Joker would be somewhere in the middle, or Bane in the Batman universe would be somewhere in the middle. A good example of a book would probably be much closer to the villain end would be Saruman, who is essentially in the Lord of the Rings books, who is essentially a opportunist, who's doing what he does because he thinks he's essentially on the winning side. So yeah. But in comparison to this book, and the reason I brought it up is obviously in comparison to the Diary of a Lonely Demon books, we've seen kind of nonstop in this book where all of the primary antagonists and even the quote-unquote rivals and the quote-unquote villains are very one-dimensional. They do something because that's what they are. There's no explanation. We don't know why, for instance, hell is invading. I think I'll link to a picture that John sent to a guy that I know, regarding essentially the mindset behind the demons. Whereas John essentially said that the demons are doing this because they think humans are inferior, without any real explanation as to why they think humans are inferior. And well, sadly enough, that's all the demons really are. They're just this quite literally, they're a faceless mass of just villains who kill, rape, destroy without any reason whatsoever, aside from, they perceive humans as inferior. Now, this is obviously a bit of a simplification, but the quality just isn't... You're not actually seeing villain characters in this book. I'm sorry, you're not seeing antagonist characters in this book. You're seeing villains. And well, again, you can argue as to the semantics, but in this example, the villain versus the antagonist is a very different thing. But anyway, so and then today we're going to look into a little bit more about the primary villain or the rival in chapter 4, and hopefully finish chapter 4. So, but long story short, the TLDR or TLDL, too long didn't listen, version of that is more or less a quality piece of writing, a quality piece of media, be it movie, books, video games, whatever, will have, unless it's, you know, like a satire, a play on itself, something that doesn't take itself too seriously, an antagonist, someone who has a decent reason for doing what they're doing, a decent reason for doing bad, or essentially, or even a decent backstory as to why they're doing what they're doing, would be better than just a faceless mass of evil that you essentially have in the Diary of a Lonely Demon books. So, a bit long-winded. But let's get started. I want to get finished. I'm going to start this section back where I ended it last week, where the rival or the villain in this particular section shows up and starts being one of John's patented villains. Yes, anyway. But again, thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoy this, and if you do, rate, comment, subscribe, and next time, I suppose. Yes. Yes. Okay, I'll start with what I ended off on. Hey there, he smiled at the redhead before him, a beer in one hand and a pool cue in the other. This guy bugging you? Jasper rolled his eyes and was about to walk away, but this wall of a human being stood in his way. It was clear that he had been drinking, and judging from his demeanor and smell, he must have been drinking for a while. Italics. Oh God. Unitalics. Why not take a hike, pal? The rival asked. A real man's going to show her a good time. Jasper was intimidated, but he didn't show it. The girl couldn't tell what he was feeling at all. It was as if there was a wall between her and his soul. Jasper took a deep breath and thought for only a second what to do. Well, Well, don't you think that's up to her? He asked. How about I kick your ass? How about I call the cops? Screw you. In the rival's drunken buzz state, it was the only comeback he could come up with. With her keen perception, Morgalla could tell precisely what the other guy was feeling. Alcohol often would open one's soul and make it vulnerable to her. The intentions of this other person were nefarious indeed. It was simply lust at first, clearly directed at her, but now there was anger. This anger must be directed at the man he saw standing in his way. Oh crap, said Andy when he saw the much bigger man standing before Jasper. The redhead has a boyfriend. Hearing her boyfriend's words and seeing that the redhead's boyfriend meant business, Megan grabbed her purse and dug around in it. I should still have mace in here, she said, in a frantic rush to find the only weapon she had. The rival's friends tried to pull him away. The entire situation wasn't worth getting into a fight over. He disagreed, though, and pushed his friends away, ready to hit anyone with the pool cue in his hand. No, he went on, his speech slurred slightly. He gripped the pool cue tighter and pointed it at Jasper. Listen, punk, the lady's going to have a drink with me. Get lost or get your ass kicked. The girl, on the other hand, was confused. Though she could not feel Jasper's soul, she could hear his heart beating, for he was so close, and it was beating very fast. With the advice of his friend, Megan, still fresh in his mind, Jasper had to think of a plan. And fast. The place was crowded. No way was this guy actually going to start something in front of all those witnesses. Italics. Maybe this girl would be impressed with a little guts. Unitalics. Jasper was trying to be polite and not agitate the drunk, but at the same time, he couldn't back down. Look, friend, there's no way you're going to try anything in front of all these people. Yes, he would, the girl interjected, being able to feel the violent intentions of Jasper's rival. Her gut reaction was overtaking her, and she reached behind her coat to her back. I'll read that again. Her gut reaction was overtaking her, and she reached behind her coat to her back pocket. Her favorite weapon waited there, a pair of nunchuks. A hand went to the rival's shoulder. His sober friend was trying to bring sense into him, but the hand was slapped away. The redhead stepped up to Jasper's ear. "You should leave," she advised. "Seriously, he wants to kill you." "What?" Jasper was shocked by her words. Shocked. "You're kidding me. How do you know?" "It's a gift." The redhead's words and tone were serious. "You better get out of here." As the anger grew within the rival, Jasper took a step back, realizing that maybe standing up to him was a mistake. He seemed to have just poured gas on the fire. He saw his friends approaching. Megan had a small can of mace in her hand, and Andy held a pool cue tightly. "God-damned punk!" He gave Jasper a shove intended to provoke him into throwing a punch. Yeah. Jasper's rival swung the billiard cue just as Morgalla pushed him out of the way. I'm going to read those last two sentences again, and you'll see why. "God-damned punk!" He gave Jasper a shove intended to provoke him into throwing a punch. Jasper's rival swung the billiard cue just as Morgalla pushed him out of the way. If she were any taller, she would have been struck. Lucky for her, she was very short. Instead, the pool cue hit one of his sober friends. He fell back into the cocktail waitress, who in turn dropped an entire tray of beer on a total stranger playing billiards on a neighboring table. "Oh crap," Megan said. "Oh crap," Morgalla repeated. The entire room was shocked as the last domino fell, and it was on. The beer-soaked patron and his friends all turned to the culprits responsible. Jasper, still on the floor, looked at the standoff in shock. There was only enough time for everyone to take a deep breath before the brawl began. The cocktail waitress screamed as the fists flew. Pool cues and beer bottles became makeshift weapons as the two factions, some drunk and some sober, did battle among a field of green felt and second-hand smoke. "Jazz!" Andy yelled over the commotion as he and Megan sought cover. There was a barrage of battling bodies between Jasper and his friends. He looked up to see the redhead take out her nunchuks and split in half the pool cue being wielded by the drunken rival. With a massive kick, this beast of a man was thrown across the room. She was so fast and strong that surely she could not be human. Jasper looked on in shock at her skill and daring. He then noticed the cocktail waitress, screaming in fright and in a fetal position to avoid physical harm. The brawl now encompassed all of Shenanigans, having spread within a matter of seconds. Jasper crawled over to the waitress, being careful of any bodies or debris, and helped her to safety. His actions were not unnoticed by the redhead. If she didn't know it before, she was sure now that he was human. She saw Jasper, the waitress, and his friends make their way to the fire exit. There was a mass of bodies between them, and she knew she would have to make her way through the crowd to the entrance. She dodged and evaded others until she ran into a figure that stood in her way. "Hello, Morgalla," the male sneered at her. They stood frozen and gazed upon each other. She gripped her weapon, ready to strike the unknown being before her. He was massive and horrific for a human, and it took only a moment to know what he was. A demon, italics, a demon in human form. Few were capable of that. Unitalics. It was his bloodshot eyes that gave him away. She recognized them belonging to one well-known thrall of Zorach. She said nothing, for words were pointless. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw an object coming at them, and thanks to her superior reflexes, she ducked. Yeah. The chair hit him and shattered, and he stood there completely unharmed. I'm going to read that again. The chair hit him and shattered, and he stood there completely unharmed. He shook off the shock and splinters and looked to see that Morgalla was gone. She ran out of the building and heard the sounds of sirens in the distance. She could see the red and blue lights easily in the night's horizon. There were many people fleeing the building now, and she did the same. Something caught her eye, though, under the parking lot's lights. A wallet made of black leather. She thought little of it as she put it in her coat pocket. Later, on the way home, Jasper sat in the backseat of Andy's car. Andy was driving and Megan sat next to him in the passenger seat, still humming the song that Morgalla had made the entire bar sing. What? I'll come back to that. Megan looked in the back seat and saw that Jasper was sulking. So, Megan said to break the uncomfortable silence, did you get her phone number? Yeah, because that's important. Jasper was silent, deciding to sulk. Megan realized that her joke didn't go over well. Jasper pinched the bridge of his nose in apprehension. Words could not describe his relief that this day was finally over. It wasn't until he got home that he realized he had lost his wallet somewhere at Shenanigans. The cherry was then put on the top of the crap sundae that was Jasper's day. Chapter over. That's it. Chapter 5. The next episode of Wrench Reads, we'll start Chapter 5. Boring meetings. And I don't know if that's meant to be literal, ironic, or whatever, but it's... As someone who's been reading this book for 13 weeks straight, it's getting there. So let's go back. There were a couple things that I think I might have made clear in this reading, but obviously I want to go back and talk about them. First off, I'd like to mention a little bit about the villain thing that I mentioned at the start of the video. This rival doesn't even have a name. He doesn't have a name. He's just this faceless, bulky, like wall of a man whose only purpose, it seems, is to start a fight. It's incredibly one-dimensional as a character. But I'd like to also bring attention to a couple more things, kind of from the last couple of readings, especially, I think it's 2 readings ago, when I started this chapter. This is a weeknight in Springdale, the city. The drunken brawl that the drunken brawl that takes place in the end of the chapter doesn't really make sense, and that's part of why. People tend not to get as drunk on a weekday. Also, there's no reason for this whole mess to spread to the entire bar, but I'll get to that in a bit. Let's go back and just do a play-by-play. Yeah, as I mentioned, the rival has nothing more than a name and very little of a description except he's big and burly. Kind of like, well, the demon thrall of Zorach that Morgalla faces off with at the end of this chapter. Dialogue, of course, is crap. Why not take a hike, pal? A real man's going to show her a good time. What else? And then a couple paragraphs, or about a paragraph later. Well, don't you think that's up to her? He asked. Oh, that's something else. I'll get to that after I read this. How about I kick your ass? And this is how, about, rather than how about I kick your ass or whatever. How about I kick your ass? How about I call the cops? Screw you! Even for a drunk, this isn't realistic dialogue. It's as though both Jasper and the rival have exactly the same voice. And the rival is just a belligerent John or something. But let's see. Screw you and the rival's drunken buzz state. It was the only comeback he could come up with. John must have never gotten really drunk, because screw you is more than a lot of drunks could come up with if they're drunk. Also, which state is he in? A buzz state is a lesser drunken state. How does he say it? A drunken buzz state is contradictory in and of itself. Buzz is less than drunk. If we want to glom the two together, a drunken buzz state doesn't even work. A really drunk, less drunk state. I'm translating drunken and buzz to their, So, and again, weeknight. Why the hell is there Why the hell is there people? Why are there people getting, you know, pissed drunk, like belligerent drunk, on a weeknight? Let's see. And of course, Morgalla here. The entire chapter is kind of written in the way that you don't really know that the girl up until this point in the chapter is actually Morgalla. I mean, you know because you have the other chapters as a reference, so you, the reader, would know this is Morgalla, but Jasper doesn't know. And this kind of gets back to what I was saying last week as to John not keeping it in the same voice, because you actually have, with her keen perception, Morgalla, this is the first time her name is actually used in this chapter, could tell precisely what this other guy was feeling. The intentions of this other person were nefarious indeed. So rather than welcome to our villain, this guy wants to fuck Morgalla. Well, and he says it right here. Pardon my French. It was simply lust at first, clearly directed at her, but now there was anger. Oh, a guy gets in my way because I want to bone this chick. Despite the fact that that's not how you... How the hell would this guy know how to get anything from anyone if that's how he approaches a situation? I mean, yes, I'll grant him that he might be drunk, but all Morgalla would have to say, all John would have to have actually said from Morgalla is, no, thank you. And there's no... Morgalla didn't even rebuff this guy's advances, even though... She didn't rebuff his advances, even though he made it very clear as to what he wanted. It's stupid of Morgalla as a character not to say something to try to diffuse the situation. And it's irresponsible of the character not to try to diffuse the situation. Because it's obvious that the friends of this rival don't want anything to happen. It's obvious that Jasper doesn't want anything to happen. And Morgalla, this super powerful demon-esque character, can't say, you know what, no, I'm fine. Fuck off. Or, yeah. Pardon my French. Right. Let's see. Andy and Megan immediately go for weapons, which is, again, you're at a bar, you don't immediately pull out a gun. Though Andy eventually will grab a pool cue and Megan will have a mace, which is never used. John's use of targeted, like, masculine, feminine, I think the pronouns are bad. Like, the he in this section is very ambiguous. The rival's friends tried to pull him away. The entire situation wasn't worth getting into a fight over. He disagreed. This is relatively clear, but there are other points in the section where he and him and his and so on is very ambiguous between both the rival, the drunk guy, and Jasper. But John doesn't even know how to write drunk speech. He's saying this guy's slurring his words. Listen, punk, the lady's going to have a drink with me. Get lost or get your ass kicked. More of that high school bullshit language. And of course, Morgalla doesn't say a word. Morgalla doesn't say a word to try to help diffuse this. Again, our hero, everyone. The girl, on the other hand, was confused. Really? The girl, on the other hand, was confused. About what? What was coming? What she could clearly sense? And it says it right here in the freaking... freaking bar? We get to one of my favorite kind of bullshit moments in this chapter. Her gut reaction was overtaking her, and she reached behind her coat to her back pocket. That's an improper way of saying it. I used to wear trench coats a lot when I was in high school. You don't reach behind the coat, you reach beneath the coat to something in your back pocket. That's a nitpick. Her favorite weapons waited there, a pair of nunchucks. Nunchucks! Nunchucks! She's never... and these are supposedly her favorite weapons, even though... I'll put the link to what John said about nunchucks in the description bar below as well. Nunchucks are apparently rare in hell, yet they're her favorite weapons. Yet she's never displayed with them in either John's writing, and I think There's very few times that she's actually shown with them in this book. Why are they her favorite weapons? Why is she never drawn with them? It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense for her to actually have them specifically because these are very rare. Well, it's a very rare kind of weapon to use, specifically in, if I'm reading this right, the type of kind of pseudo-medieval European swordplay that John actually writes in this book. Oh, and I kind of pointed this out in the reading. Goddamned punk, he gave Jasper a shove intended to provoke him into throwing a punch. And then the very next sentence, Jasper's rival swung the billiard cue just as Morgalla pushed him out of the way. Which was it? Was the rival belligerent enough to just push Jasper into try to getting Jasper to do something? In which case, Jasper could just say, fuck off. The bartender would have seen this and kicked the guy out. But then, rather than giving that anything, the rival swung the pool cue. Aside from the fact that the bartender would have seen this problem a mile away, would have tried to get the guy thrown out, would have tried to help the guy's friends. It's an incredibly unrealistic scene, specifically because there are so many times that this could have and would have been diffused in an actual realistic sense, but obviously wasn't. Thank you, John. Instead, the pool cue hit one of his sober friends. He fell back into the cocktail waitress. And then the cocktail waitress drops some beer on some other people, and everyone goes at it. Aside from the fact that anyone who's paying attention knows that this is something that they'd probably not want. They probably wouldn't want this. Why would you want to get into a fight that would draw the cops and get you in trouble? It doesn't make sense. I've personally never been around a bar when it's gone into a brawl. I've been shoved in a bar at one point, but the guy was pissed drunk. And I knew the guy was pissed drunk because of how he was carrying himself. And I was like, oh, okay, go away. I moved away from him so he wouldn't have the chance to shove me again. It's as though John, or Jasper, through John, wants this to happen, so therefore Jasper has a reason to get back in touch with Morgalla, which is Jasper's wallet. And that's everything. That's the culmination of the scene. Jasper wanted to lose his wallet so Morgalla could return it to him. Even though I'll move on. There was only enough time for everyone to take a deep breath before the brawl began. Again, weeknights at a bar, there's not going to be a freaking brawl if anyone knows what's good for them. But this is Springdale. No one has a self-preservation sense of anything. Pool cues and beer bottles became makeshift weapons as the two factions, some drunk and some sober, did battle among a field of green, felt, and secondhand smoke. This isn't a battle. It's an anarchic punch-up in a pub. And the two factions. What two factions? Some drunk and some not? The drunk people, or the sober people, would not get in the fight if they knew it was good for them. But, well... and more of Jasper or John's kind of pseudo description when it comes to fights. This is supposed to be a fight. This is something where people are beating the crap out of each other. This is all that is said about the fight, aside from pool cues and beer bottles are now weapons. There was a barrage of battling bodies between Jasper and his friends. He looked up to see the redhead take out her nunchucks and split in half, the pool cue being wielded by the drunken rival. How? Jasper looked on in shock at her skill and daring. Yes, we know she's a good fighter. Jasper crawled... Oh, the waitress is screaming in the fetal position, not wanting to get punched. What the heck is she doing in a bar if she doesn't know how to handle this kind of a situation? And but it gives Jasper a chance to be valiant. It gives him a chance to get the waitress out of there. Jasper crawled over to the waitress, being careful of any bodies or debris, and helped her to safety. How did he help her to safety? Where did he take her? How did he know? If Jasper was somewhere and the waitress was knocked over, how does he know that the waitress is in trouble, except for the screaming? God, I really, really hate this freaking book. And it's getting worse. It really does. The more I analyze this book, the worse it gets. A demon in human form. Few are capable of that. Really? Morgalla herself is able to take demon form, and she's a lieutenant. in the army, which means there are significantly more people above her. People above her. It's inconsistent with the demons. It was the bloodshot eyes that gave him away. The fact that he looked like a troglodyte wasn't something that gave him away. I'm running out of time. The chair hit him, shattered, and he stood there completely unharmed. Yes, we know. Description of the evening after everyone left. She could see the red and blue lights easily in the night's horizon. No, just no. Oh, and it looks like John was going to try to do something in this scene and then completely removed it. Let's see. Andy was driving, and Megan sat next to him in the passenger seat, still humming the song that Morgalla had made the entire bar sing. Morgalla never did anything like that. So, again, a lack of editing. John has no idea how to clench a scene. He has no idea how to build a scene and keep it consistent. And we've seen this so much. And then Jasper dropped his wallet. He literally did nothing that would merit him losing his wallet. He didn't get punched. He didn't get thrown. He didn't, have his pants rifled through by someone who knocked him out. There's nothing he did that would have lost him his wallet. And it was lost to him in the parking lot. So there's no reason to believe that Jasper should have lost his wallet, could have lost his wallet, or did lose his wallet, except for the fact that it gives Jasper a chance to meet up with Morgalla again, obviously. So that's the entire premise of this section, that Jasper now has a reason to meet up with Morgalla again. We're going to get into why that's terrible, and we're going to get into some of John or Jasper's disregard for authority next week and in Chapter 5, because this really starts to bring more into stark perspective the fact that Jasper is a complete and utter douche nozzle. So, with that, take care, everybody. Na zdravie.